What's going on, everybody? This is the host of Recover Out Loud podcast, Sean Young. Before we dive in, I want to be clear I'm not a medical professional. I'm not here to diagnose or treat. I'm simply a catalyst, someone who's walked through the fire and now speaks from experience, reflection, and a deep desire to help others find their way forward. This podcast may include honest conversations about addiction, mental health challenges, and suicidal thoughts or ideations. These are real parts of the human experience, and we won't shy away from them. If you're listening, please do so with self-care and self-awareness. And if you're struggling, please reach out. There's help out there. And most importantly, there's hope. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's get it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud podcast. I'm your host, Sean Young. Today, we've got an awesome episode 99, with former Boston Red Sox player Michael Bulgary. How you doing, brother?
Good. How are you doing, Sean?
Man, I can't complain. Today's another great day in paradise.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here. Every day that I wake up, is a day in paradise.
Absolutely. Michael, would you like to give us a formal introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like you mentioned, I was a former professional player. I pitched for the Boston Red Sox organization, and during my second professional season, I suffered a career-ending arm injury, and baseball was my identity, and I felt like I lost my worth and my purpose when that happened, and I didn't really know how to cope with it, so I turned to my solution was opiates and other forms of substance, and as my addiction to progressed eventually to heroin, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor the size of slightly smaller than like a lacrosse ball in my cerebellum, the movement part of my brain.
Whew, that's rough. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to let all the viewers know before when you and I were talking beforehand, I was joking around and saying, I grew up a Yankees fan, and so I was gonna come on with a Yankees cap and be like, hey, I was a Yankees fan, but that's not a part of my identity anymore. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's awesome. It's not every day that you meet somebody that used to play for your rival, your childhood rival baseball team.
Yeah, if you wore a Stanford hat, I would have been a little bit more rattled. So that's I went to Berkeley, so we have a little Stanford rivalry there. So
Yeah. And we were talking about some of the differences, like growing up and stuff prior to going on record. And one of the things that I brought up is that I've heard rumors that if you go to Boston with any form of Yankees memorabilia, like you're asking for violence to be done on you.
Yeah, you're doing it intentionally because something's going to happen. You got to know that going in.
Yeah. Be aware of your surroundings. That is, I don't like to test fate now as a full grown adult in recovery. I don't like to test fate. I definitely wouldn't walk into Boston with the Yankees, anything Yankees on at all.
Yeah. In sobriety, I haven't been in one fight. Imagine that, So definitely don't want to test it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. All right. So Michael, before we also dive into this, where are you from? Like, how was your childhood?
So it was good. I'm from a military family, and we settled in Monterey, California, when I was like around 5-ish or so, and I think my parents are from the East Coast, both sides, and I think when we moved out there, it was paradise, and I think they wanted to raise their family there, and so we settled in Monterey, California, in Northern California.
Nice. Yeah, I'm.
So now
I'm a veteran.
now I'm in Ohio. So now I moved 4 years ago. I moved to northeastern Ohio. So.
Oh, nice. Okay. So that's crazy. I'm a veteran myself, so thank your family for their service to
Oh,
our great country.
and thank you for yours.
Thank you. And so do you know where Erie, Pennsylvania is?
Yes, I'm really close to that actually. I mean,
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
within 50
yes.
miles, so
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, I grew up
yeah.
there.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
I'm in Ashtabula area. Uh,
okay.
I inherited a big property in the middle of nowhere from my grandfather. So I sort of during the pandemic, I decided to what better place for me to recover and to learn the difference between isolation and solitude than out here in nature. So it's been a
Absolutely.
really healing place for me in my recovery.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I started my recovery in the pandemic, and I wish that I would have been in solitude and not
Yeah, yeah,
isolation, but solitude. You know what I mean? Uh, but hey, I mean,
yeah,
each journey is different.
yeah. No, that had to be a struggle. I think because I was right after it. You know,
Mhm.
there was a big difference when I got to Ohio versus California in terms of shutdowns and things, and that's a story for another day. But I saw the impact it had on meetings and the way people met in person. And I'm grateful that I didn't have to go through that. I can imagine it was pretty difficult.
Yeah, to some degree, it was. So when I was in my active addiction, I'd love to be the life of the party, and so like I was
Yeah,
glad to
yeah,
be not the center of attention at that point for good and bad reasons.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into it. You played baseball and you got drafted to the Red Sox and you accrued an injury.
Yes.
What happened in that injury?
So it was I was pitching in like one of my last spring training games before the season was about to break, where all the different teams go out and I threw a pitch and I felt a pop and I knew something was really wrong. I think at the time I learned from my first year that if you haven't, especially the depth charts, and every organization has a lot of players, and if you complain about an injury, you don't. It takes a long. You go to the bottom of the depth chart, and it takes a long time to work your way back up. So if it was, unless it's, hey, I can't throw anymore, that's the only time you complain about it. And so I tried to push through it after that, and it just got to a point where, hey, I can't throw anymore, and I had to say something and then I went through then I stayed down in spring training and then the thing about my injury is kind of when my addiction really started is back at home in California. My dad had a major heart attack around the same time
Yeah.
and my family really they really turned to him and I didn't get a lot of information and then when my dad he flatlined a few times then when he woke up the first thing that he said was, hey, tell Michael not to come home. And he didn't
Oh,
say that because he didn't want to see me. He said that because he wanted me. He thought I was out there pursuing my dream, and I realized that not so much of the time, but now that what a family investment my baseball career was. And, they took us to travel ball, and we traveled all over the country into Australia and all these other places. All their weekends were spent with me, and I didn't realize how much they were invested into it, and so I was kind of isolated out there, injured, and I didn't have that solution to find the things that I needed to get that attention and validation I wanted because I wasn't able to play. And so I turned to the things that I had. I had some prescriptions and alcohol and partying and I fell into a really dark place there and didn't spend the time I should have into my recovery, my arm
absolutely,
recovery, that is.
absolutely. Um, so how far initially did your addiction take you? Because I know that sometimes it can drop you really quick, and the other times it's just a gradual drop.
Yeah, yeah. It took some time. I think it was my addiction was obviously was long before any so most of my drugs of choice are amphetamines and opiates. So
Yeah.
my addiction began though long before I took drink or drugs. It was with baseball because I was so desperate for attention and validation growing up early on, and I learned when I played baseball that I got that, and so baseball became my higher power. And so as long as I had baseball in my life, I was getting drug tested and it kept me. I drank alcoholically, but I could always manage it and manage the time that I not when I drank it, but I could manage how many times that I used it because it didn't help me on the baseball field, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it did help me keep up the character that I created off the field. And then I got introduced to Adderall when started my junior season, but the year before I got drafted. And so I always needed something for something, right?
Yeah.
I needed alcohol to go out and have fun, to talk to girls. I needed this for that. And so Adderall became the it was what I was looking for. I had that moment. This is what I needed. And because it helped me on the field and off the field. And
Yeah.
so with Adderall, but I experimented with other drugs. I mean, I like to get messed up. So I tried opiates. I tried all these other things in college, and I did those things. But like I said, with being drug tested in baseball, I was in control. But when I lost baseball, I lost my higher power. I lost that internal compass. Then the opiates it quickly took off. And then this was around when OxyContin was pretty prevalent, and you could abuse it. Then they stopped. So I would keep up appearances. I would because I didn't have any acceptance in my life at this time, right? I was told after my injury that I could never throw right again,
Yeah.
which I didn't know how to hear that. I couldn't imagine a life without baseball. And so I would go through these 6-month binges. I would binge OxyContin, and then I would go cold turkey, and then I would try to get in shape and try to go play again, and then I would get hurt. And every time that happened, it got a little bit worse and a little bit it progressed. Then I started smoking it, and then OxyContin stopped becoming available, and then heroin's cheaper and better, right? And so then once heroin enters my life, right, there's no capacity to think about anything else, right? And so that's when I wasn't able to keep up those dual appearances. And once I went, that's when I spiraled down pretty quickly.
Goodness. I can only imagine, and I know that people always talk about certain things are gateway drugs and certain things are gateway drugs, but really, I mean, you start dabbling in the harder shit, and then like it just continues to go downhill. I know people that have started out like you said with pills, and then it's gradually gone to crack, to heroin, to meth, and it just continuously spirals out of control.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean,
so go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I
Okay.
was gonna say, yeah. So, uh, um, yeah, I know. I think that I like to put a fancy bow on it, right? Because I like to. That's just how I am. We like to embellish a little bit, and I like to say, hey, I got hurt, and that's when I was introduced to painkillers, and I have this tragic story where I got hurt, and then painkillers took me to heroin, and it's not necessarily true. As I experiment. I like to do all these things beforehand. I wasn't the only reason I didn't do them is because I felt like I had more of a meaning and a purpose with baseball.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I kind of felt the same way. I had this period in 2010 where I just didn't care about life anymore, and I was experimenting. I was still in the army at the time, but I was, done some coke and did some acid, and I loved them too much. And I was like, oh goodness, I can't get addicted to that because that's really bad, and that's going to take me down a dark hole, and I'm gonna lose my career. Meanwhile, I was a full blown alcoholic at the time, right? Like I'm just justifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you were talking about the validation that you got from baseball, and I don't think that gets a lot of credit, like the validation of things that we do in our personal time to fuel, or our professional time that fuel where we get to. What kind of validation, and like was that a high for you when you started to get that validation or seek it?
Yeah, that was my drug of choice at first, right? Because I think, and I hear this all the time when I hear, addicts speak, is that I had something like missing inside me, a hole, right? It's a God-shaped hole, right?
Yeah,
Right? Because in my mind, I'm my higher power, right? And so I need to fill it with something, right? Because I had this weird, and that's what the title of my book that comes out is "The Disease of Me." I had this internal desire for attention. Attention was as much as anything validation. Like I didn't really care, especially when I started to get more attention the better that I got at baseball. I didn't care if it was good or bad. I
yeah,
just wanted you to talk about me. I had just had this overwhelming desire to be paid attention to. And I found baseball was the quickest way for me to feel that. I wanted to be great.
yeah,
And I think a lot of us can do that in our jobs or whatever it may be. It's an identity crisis kind of thing, right? I wanted to be the best, something that I wasn't, the best version of myself at all times.
absolutely, absolutely. So what did that rock bottom look like for you? Because rock bottom looks a little bit different for everybody, and some people will hit rock bottom multiple times in their life. What did it look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. And I think too, rock bottom for me necessarily didn't happen at the time, right, where when I stopped using, right. So right after my brain cancer diagnosis, and I know I kind of cut it off in the introduction, but I had multiple brain surgeries. I had to have this really intense chemotherapy and radiation, and I lost probably 50, 60 pounds. They had to build a special cage for the radiation to bolt my head down so it wouldn't move, so the radiation would blast the back of my skull. I remember tasting metal for like a year, and all my hair had fallen out, and I had this yellow tint to the skin around my eyes, it, and you think that would change, going through something like that, normal person, that would change them, right? After all the things that I've been through with addiction, but not me. Just a couple of weeks later, my mom found me passed out in my car with drug paraphernalia on my lap, and probably thinking I was dead, right? And so, and the main reason that, because when I was going through all this cancer stuff, my mom and I felt like they snitched on me at the time, right? They told the doctors that I was an addict, so they wouldn't give me any of the good stuff. They would give me just these two measly Vicodin, and so I needed something for something, right? So I had to go out and get it, and so I went out and met with my dealer, and got it. And just 2 weeks after, I learned I was in remission. And so at that point, my mom left, and then my girlfriend at the time, they left. So I was alone, and it was just in Arizona. And I remember this moment so vividly. Of just I was after a couple of week binge on heroin, and just sick to my stomach, skin, bones, just from all the treatment, and then an opiate withdrawal too. And I was just laying there, like, remember thinking that was what bottom feels like, right? But at the same time, is bottom's only when you stop digging,
Yep.
and I wanted to keep going. I just had a chisel, just chipping away at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What was that moment like for you that said that where you told yourself like this is enough, I'm done, I need help?
Yeah, I've had a few of those moments. I think we all have, and I think the biggest one for me was a couple years later, when I call it a God moment. I was driving to work, and I just had this overwhelming urge, that just a thought where I had to pull over, and I realized just what an a-hole that I am.
Yeah.
What an asshole I am, what a jerk. All the things that I've done to my family. It was that moment where I knew I had a problem. I knew I was an addict. I knew I did these things. I knew things had to change. But it was the first time that I felt it, right? Where I felt it. Say that 18 inches between your head and your heart is the greatest distance. But when I felt it, that's when I knew that I had that like eked out a little bit of willingness inside me, right? Because before it was all denial, anger, and blame buried so deep under denial, right? But when that willingness ekes out, and I was willing to do it myself, and get that help, that was that moment. And there's a few other things that happened, but I remember that moment vividly, and I call that a spiritual experience, because that idea didn't come from me; it came from somebody else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It came from your higher power, man, or another source of
Yeah.
of greater knowledge. So where did you begin your recovery? Because some people begin in the rooms, other people begin in hospitals or recovery centers. Where did you begin yours?
So yeah, I mentioned earlier about the progression to heroin, right? And so when that came, I was really good at the time at keeping up appearances. I was giving baseball lessons and making good money and doing all these things. But then, really, once that heroin entered my life, I just lost that ability to even care about that stuff. And that's when the people around me started to take notice. I think, like a lot of addicts, we get really good at living dual lives and wearing masks, and I got really really good at it. But when that drug really entered me, and it changed everything. And so when my family started taking notice, I walked into an intervention one day. I always make the joke. It's like a reverse surprise party. With the intervention, where instead of, like, hey, surprise, it's everybody sitting in there with a circle with letters, and you have the interventionist or whatever he is in the middle. And I remember, like, thinking, like, there's people in there that hadn't been around in years, and I'm like, who invited you? And I think at that point, right? It's hard enough to fill the seats. I wonder if they have that contract in the beginning where you have to get at least 8 people to come. And so I think they had to sign some people on, right? But I just came here to get $40, man. What's going on? But yeah. So they sent me to a treatment center in Arizona, and it was a 10-month inpatient treatment, and that was my first introduction to AA. And I thought all of them were 10 months. I didn't know there was 30-day ones. So
Yeah.
I was like, I built a resentment up after that. But yeah, that was my first thing.
I feel,
So
I feel like if you like if I ever had an intervention, like the first thing that would enter my mind is you sons of bitches. Like
yeah, no, I was so mad. I was so mad. Yeah. But
I
like
bet. I bet.
what right do I have to be mad? It's insane. You know what I mean? Like I'm tearing these people's lives apart. They're not sleeping at night. I'm living in their house. I'm doing drugs. And then all of a sudden
Yeah.
I'm gonna be mad because they want me to stop. It's insanity. Because I
Yeah.
my disease thinks I only hurt me. It doesn't realize the wreckage that I bring to everybody else around me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a
So
firm believer that we all have victims.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think that regardless if somebody gets like a DUI or if somebody has never stolen something from somebody to get their drug of choice or whatever, like we all have victims because it impacts everybody around us, our worker, the people that we work with. It impacts our family, our friends, even our animals. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, I never stole anything from a store, but I'm absolutely a thief because how much time did I steal? How much time did I
Yep.
steal from all my loved ones? And how many nights are they worried about me? And, that's even I'm just as bad. And even when I speak now at prisons, I used to think that I would have a hard time relating because I didn't go to prison or I didn't. Uh, I didn't steal or do any of these things. But the truth is, the reason I'm not sitting next to any of them is because I'm lucky and I had people that bailed me out because I did a lot of things that deserved me to be there. So, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard this saying so much that it's only illegal till you get caught, and that is the finest line that you can have, right? Is I know I've been caught. I went to jail for a little bit, but then there's people who have done things where they haven't gotten caught, but they suffer the same the same fate as me because they're in their own personal prison.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
So
Absolutely.
So what was that first meeting like for you? I always ask this question because I feel like it's important because everybody's interpretation of their first meeting is different.
Sure. I hated it. I wanted nothing to do with it. I was right out that time where I was just like still in that delusion where I was this professional athlete, right? I'm not like any of these people. They're talking about. I thought it was like a cult, right? Talking about God and all this other stuff. I didn't want to hear any of that. I was, I appreciated their pamphlets and all these other things, but I was like, if anybody can just teach me how to use heroin like a gentleman on the weekends, I'll be good. I didn't want to do any of this other stuff. I looked for the differences, not the similarities, right from the bat. And what changed me, honestly, gave me a little bit of perspective was when I heard somebody speak that's gone through it. When I learned that somebody drank like I drank, when I learned that somebody used drugs the way that I use them, and learned how they recovered. That's what really helped me. You know, opened up my mind a little bit was to see somebody else
Absolutely.
go through it.
Absolutely. I call that transition the going from have to want to because you go to like, when I entered in my recovery program, I didn't want to go to the meetings. I had to go to the meetings. They were court mandated. I didn't want to go there, because I'm like, it's a bunch of old people talking about their problems and nothing is changing.
Yeah.
But then I heard that one thing that unlocked that door, and then I went from the have to the want to, and then it eventually went to the need to. Like I need to go to these meetings, or I need to continue my program because this is life or death.
Yeah. And I think I can't sit here and pretend that I'm Mr. Big AA. I do a lot of work helping people through with cancer stuff and other ways, but I have my home group that I go to, and I'm secretary there every week. And the main reason why I have to continue to go there is my support system. Because if I don't show up, I'm gonna get 50 or 60 calls, and I have all these people that if I need anything or if I'm going through anything, I have, they know that I have somebody to turn to or talk to, and I get to hear stories and still continue. It keeps me to remind me of the consequences of my actions. And so it is something that I need to do. I purposely do it on Saturday nights, so it's, it's just a huge part of my support system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would agree. Having that support system, especially in early recovery or, long recovery, long-term recovery is very important because, I don't know about you, but my human brain tells me I don't need anybody at times. And I
Oh yeah.
always need people. I always need somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, just
Yeah.
like, just,
Mine is too. Yeah.
and then going, and then, another thing I heard, and I've heard this like quite frequently, is I need to chase my recovery like I used to chase my alcoholism, right? I have to
Yeah.
want it the same amount as I, did when I was drinking.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, that's something I talk about in my book a lot. I call it's domain depends, right? We have how can I apply those same positive skills in from my addiction? How can I apply them into another aspect of my life, right? And when you get some time in recovery and you learn to be service to others, it changes your perspective in the way that you think, right? Right. And you learn you don't learn all the stuff that bad stuff that happened to you. It's not about what you lost, right? You learn what you've gained from it. And I
Yeah,
gained some of that determination and grit that I had to do to find and to procure my drugs. Right, it's the creativity and the insanity you have to go through to get what you want. It's incredible sometimes. And if you can apply that creativity into other aspects of your life, then you can be really successful.
absolutely, absolutely. And how has recovery changed your life?
Well, in every way possible. I think just what I mentioned about the book. There's no way I thought I could write a book sober. 300
Yeah,
some pages. I had no idea that I could do that. A big aspect to me, and I think it's something I hadn't mentioned to you, a big turning point in my life, besides that moment where I realized I'm an asshole, is when I was introduced to my therapy dog, Lingo. He was in the army too, my dog, and he was stationed at the military base in Monterey where my mom worked, and he was having a hard time on the base because he didn't have a handler, and I was having a hard time at home, and my mom thought that introducing us would we could help each other, and he was like the first good thing to happen to me in the midst of all these bad things happening to me, and he kind of inspired me to change because I knew that in order to keep him, I had to get better, and so when he retired from the army, I was able to adopt him, and I promised that I would continue his work as a therapy dog to help other people the way that he helped me. And today, now we are part of the Pet Pals organization in Cleveland at University Hospitals, and we visit the kids with cancer or other ailments, and visit the cancer center. And honestly, going to the hospital and doing that service to other people and seeing them. Seeing the kids, letting the kids pet them, and me talking to their families. That's who it's really for, right? The families. The families get to see their kids smile for the first time in who knows how long, and we talk to them, and it just changes the way that I think. Right, it makes me think of my family, my mom when she found me, right, or it just changes how I view the world and makes me want to do better in the future. So with recovery, just by showing up, just by trying my best and just being myself, I learn a little something more about myself each time, and it just gives me that sense of gratitude. So it's changed every aspect of my life. It just changed the way that I look at the world. So
absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think dogs are a real blessing. Like, I mean, animals in general, as long as they're not assholes. But I think
yeah,
dogs.
well, people too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, very true. I think dogs are a huge blessing in our life. I was never a dog person until I got into recovery, and then like I've been surrounded by dogs, and I'm so grateful that I am. How has Lingo helped you in your recovery?
well, I mean, in many ways, like I said, he inspired me to get better, and he was just that comfort for me. But I think the biggest thing that he helped me in not just in my sobriety, but in my cancer recovery was, my tumor that happened to me was uh, extremely rare in adults. It happens to like 0.001% of adults, but it's pretty prevalent in children. And I knew, like, the hell that I went through with that treatment. And I just the thought of a innocent 5-year-old going through that, it kind of broke me on the inside a little bit, and that was kind of my motivation for wanting to bring lingo to the children's hospital. And children's hospital is great because it is for the kids, but I kind of, when I started doing it, I avoided the cancer center for adults. I think because of my trauma that was there, and I didn't really know how to face it. And then we started to take requests, and that brought me over to the adult side. And when we visit the adults, it's less about lingo and it's more about me. Lingo gets me in the door, right? And lingo, because when I get in there and I talk to these patients that are going through the hardest time of their lives, and they hear my story and they see the way that I look and what I've gone through, that they know that they can get through it and they can thrive afterwards, you know. And I think having lingo inspired me to my motivational speaking career that I have now, to want to help other people, because you know, helping other people helps me. It's just the truth, you know. When I help other people, I get outside of myself. Anything that I can do to get outside of me helps me.
Absolutely. I like I said before, I couldn't agree more. I think that being of service to other people is a service to myself, because not only am I giving of myself, but I'm receiving. I'm receiving something that I didn't know that I needed at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one final question that I have before I move on to my final question is, life doesn't stop when recovery happens. And I know that we hear that a lot in the rooms, or we hear a lot, here and there. Life doesn't stop when recovery happens. And the skills and the tools that we learn in recovery um, shape us into who we are meant to be, or who we're going to be later on. How have your recovery skills been able to work for you when life gets hard?
Yeah, and that's a great point. Is that it doesn't get easier. Life is full of these challenges and obstacles. You know, I think the biggest skill that I've gained, and maybe you have this too, is the gift of introspection, right? The gift to question my thoughts, that my thinking, because I believe that my disease is terminal, right? I can take drugs and alcohol out of my life, and I still have all my character defects. I believe that I'm the disease. And so when things don't happen the way that I want them to, for example, right now with my book, I'm in the process of getting it published, and I'm dealing with all these things, and people aren't answering me, and I'm getting rejected, and this and that, and it's life's not happening on my terms, it's happening on life's terms, right? And what do? Do I get upset? Do I build a resentment? Do I get high about it? No, I have to question the way that I feel, because the feelings that I have are that's okay to have them. That's okay to be a little angry. It's okay to be a little frustrated, but that's going to go away in 3 seconds. I have to, if I need to talk to somebody about it, I have that, those recovery tools. But these things are going to mount up. The biggest thing, like I said, the gift of questioning my first initial thoughts, because usually my first initial thoughts are not good ones of what I want to do.
Yeah, yeah, very true. I had some situations this past weekend where I definitely was able to challenge my thoughts, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was not in recovery. Some situations where anger popped up, and I had to sit and say, "Okay, am I really angry about this, or is there an underlying issue?" And it was definitely an
Yeah.
underlying issue, and
Yeah.
it very rarely is I'm angry. It's anger's that go to for me, that and I dare say anger is a drug, because it releases the dopamine and all that stuff that we get in our body.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's always an underlying issue for me. I see some of these kids at the gym, right? And I'm like, I see them flexing in the mirror, and they got their stupid new age haircuts, and I'm like, I want to say something so bad, and I'm like, Michael, what's that going to do? It's because the reason why you hate them is because you were like that. You're exactly like that when you're younger, and that's what it always comes down to. It's either I'm envious of someone, or I was just like this. It's always something that I see in myself, and. I don't know, just to have that, and I know that that's not me. That's somebody else above me that's doing that for me. It's an amazing feeling to have. And you can have fun with it. It's to be able to laugh at yourself is such a gift.
Yeah,
And it's something. It's a unique gift, that redemption that being an addict gave me. Seeing myself at the worst, seeing myself at the bottom, and seeing seeing me completely exposed has able to me to rebuild myself back in a way that I can, be content and learn to laugh, at myself. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about your book a little bit. What is your book about?
So it's called The Disease of Me. It's how losing my professional baseball career, drug addiction, and brain cancer saved my life. And it's just about my little bit about my past, how my identity as a baseball player, and like a lot of the things that we already talked about, and how I overemphasized that role, and then how my life spiraled down through addiction, uh, and then that eventually to brain cancer. And I call then I talk about the solution, right? The solution for me is, taking personal responsibility, right? I have to learn how to, accept the mistakes from my past that and not to close the door on it, but to learn from it, and acceptance is something that's hard. It's hard for me and hard for a lot of us. And then I have to learn how to manage my pain, because if I'm in pain and I only think about myself, right? Because we all have pain, physical, mental, whatever it may be. I had a ton of pain from my side effects. I have a ton of nerve pain all over, and I had to learn how to manage that to be able to move past my own immediate needs. And then managing my relationships, I had to connect to my higher power. I had to work on my relationships with my family, because when I do those things, I have gratitude, and then I have a change of perspective, and then that's how I can live in the solution. And then when I live in the solution, my perspective changes, right? To not about why I was spared, why am I still here, to what can I do about it? What do I do with the time that I have now? How do I give back to the things that, how do I show I'm grateful for being alive? Because I should be dead. There's so many things that I've gone through that I shouldn't be here, but how do I show that I'm grateful to be here? How do I wake up every day and get a little bit better than the day before, and impact the environment around me?
Absolutely. I'm so big on gratitude, um, not just from a recovery aspect, but from a personal aspect, because gratitude, like personal gratitude for being grateful for things and being grateful for myself, can really open up a lot for me in my, my mental health and my personal life, my recovery, and everything in between. And I think gratitude's really important. And one of the things that I ask all my guests at the end of the show is, what are three things you're grateful for today, Michael?
Oh, good question. I can write you a list. I mean, I'm grateful that I've learned the difference between isolation and solitude. I'm grateful to wake up and to be excited for the day, right? Not to dread the day, not to dread how I'm going to get something. I'm grateful to just to be excited for this experience. And what I'm grateful for today is uncertainty. I used to fear uncertainty, right? I used to like, that's the one thing that I think it's in human nature to fear the unknown, right? But now I'm like, these challenges and these adversities that happen, I'm like excited to see how I respond, because every time I face something challenging, I learn a little bit more about myself. And that for me, this recovery is a process of self discovery, really, right? It's learning who I am, because I always never knew who I was, because I was never willing to show up, right, and just be myself. I'm grateful that I get to show up and be myself today.
Absolutely. And today, who is Michael Bulgary?
Was that?
Today, today, who is Michael Bulgari?
Ooh, I'm an imperfect perfectionist. I'm just a walking contradiction, right? But I think, I'm somebody that's just trying to find meaning and hope in my suffering, right? I'm just trying, like I said, I'm trying to do a little bit better than the day before. I'm living, I use the analogy, like, you ever heard that analogy where, there you have the white wolf inside you and the black wolf inside you, and whatever one you feed, right? That's who you are. I think I'm the gray wolf, right? The one that's in between, living in the grays of life and of the ups and downs, right? And just marred from the past, but still shining from the future and the present. I'm a flawed human being, right? And I'm so grateful for that. And I continue to learn more and more about myself just by showing up and being present, because being present, right, is really the place where that I heal. So I try my best to help other people in the best way that I can, and just try to be me, whenever I can, always.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the most important, is finding out who you are and how you can show up for yourself and for other people.
Amen.
So, Michael, where can we find you at?
So my website is michaelbugary.com. And then I'm also on Facebook, Michael Bugary. And then I have some Instagram presence that's it's at M initial Bugary, but that's mostly a personal thing. But the best way to reach me is my website. It has my email and contact information. If you want to hear me speak or just just send me an email or talk to me about anything. I'm just grateful to have a conversation and to be here. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And I may be making a trip up to Erie sometime within the near future, and I would love to meet you in person and shake your hand.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely. Maybe you come down and see the farm, or I'll get you some coffee or something. Either way. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I would
awesome.
I would
That's
like
awesome.
that, Sean.
Yeah, same here. Same here. All right, everybody. I want to take a moment and say thank you, Michael, for sharing this time with us and sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us. It's important. What we're doing here is very important to recovery, to the community, and to letting people know that they're not alone and that they're not suffering alone, and that there's millions of people who have gone through it. And and I want to thank everybody else for spending this time with us, listening to this episode. And just remember, be kind to yourself, be gracious, love yourself. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are worth it. Till next time, much love, y'all. Be good.